which means pitchers and catchers are reporting this week. I'm your host, Andrew Parker. I'm joined by Chris Henrik as well. Today's episode, we are going to be joined by Mitch Bratt of the Texas Rangers. So please stay tuned until the end for the interview with Mitch. Before I do dive into our first segment here, I do want to stop you guys and say, wherever you are listening to this, if you're watching our pretty faces on the screen, please stop. Please like and subscribe, whatever you're on, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. Please, please, please subscribe, like, whatever you got to do. Helps us out a ton because we're going to keep delivering these every Tuesday and Thursday to you guys regardless, but it always helps. But today we are going to dive into the interview with Mitch, who, I'll intro Mitch a little bit, and then obviously we'll talk about it more after our segment. But, Mitch is in the Texas Rangers organization. He's a Canadian lefty. He was pitching in the 2023 WBC. He had fascinating stories about, being on the team, playing alongside Freddie Freeman, facing the best lineup of all time at Team USA. So please stick around to the end to catch that. Well, me and Chris today did want to do a little fun segment here where we kind of took a peek at some of the top prospects lists according to MiLB.com. And we're going to pick out a few names that we like at each position and maybe just see like who we're buying in regards to the list and who are some names that kind of stick out to us. Who do we like on the list? Chris, before we start, I just want to ask you, obviously, pitchers and catchers are here this week reporting all over Arizona and Florida. How are you feeling about 2025?
I'm ready for baseball. I think really more so when we got up here in the Northeast, we got some snow over the weekend, Saturday into Sunday, and just tired of it being cold and watching that weather around here. So seeing some of those spring training videos from a handful of camps today on social media, I'm ready for baseball to start. I'm ready for it to be warm. I'm just ready to watch, good baseball, whether it's minor league or professional ball. So I'm ready for it. I am probably like many right now who are fans of the sport. I am more than ready.
Yeah, I think when I did interview Mitch, he was already in Texas, or he was in Arizona actually, and obviously he spends the offseason in Canada. So that's a guy that has the polar opposite worlds from the offseason in Canada, way colder, probably a little more snow than what you're getting up there in New England. And obviously being in Arizona right now where it's not like, super hot, but it's still pretty warm. It's like 60, 70 degrees. So I'm excited. I'm definitely excited for just to have baseball on TV, even in the background, even if you're not really like watching the game, you at least like it's there, like something's happening. So, all right, let's. I want to jump into our little segment we're gonna do where we're kind of taking a peek at each list. We're gonna go position by position here. And it's not going to be anything crazy. We're just going to go through each position, just see the top 10 prospects there, and just pick out a name. You can do 1, 2, whatever you want. Just see who kind of sticks out to you, who you like. You can even give why you like them. Like, doesn't matter. We're just going to maybe show some love to some guys on this list that we think are going to pop this year or that we're going to buy stock in. So, Chris, without further ado, I'm going to shoot to you for the first base position. Who are you buying this year?
I think obviously the the one name that would jump out from a prospect standpoint would be Jack, but I'm going to go Bryce Eldridge, who's in the Giants system. He has a 70 grade ranking for power through MiLB.com, and if you've listened to any of our shows and we've talked about left-handed hitters, and I've been on, I have ranted and raved about how I love watching left-handed hitters hit. Especially ones who have a smooth swing and they have power with that. I think he's a 30 home run guy at the show when he gets there. A lot of lefties too on this list. There's a lot of lefties, but I could have taken the easy road and gone with Jack, but I'm going to go Bryce Eldridge. I just love the power profile, for him. Even though baseball right now, it seems like they're almost disregarding a power hitting first baseman. If you look at Tristan Casas, left-handed hitter, probably could be a 40 home run guy someday, right? But Baseball isn't really like valuing these guys. I do like Bryce Eldridge, and I think that and it's an impressive list that's there. I like him a lot. I also do kind of sneaky like Ryan Clifford, um, but with the fact that you still have Pete Alonso, well, at least for one more year, maybe he plays out the 2 years it's there. He is only at Double A right now, but you've seen guys climb through the systems pretty quick. But I'm going to go Bryce Eldridge.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the Pete Alonso free agency situation, I think helped your claim there about how baseball's kind of not really valuing the power hitting first baseman as much as maybe some of the other positions around the field and everything. I just feel like with Alonso, like not settling, but settling in a sense for the deal that he got with the Mets. It's like I think it's kind of telling. It's just like it's they're not held in I back in the day, it's like all you had was power hitting first baseman. You had like Mark McGuire's of the world, you had Jim Thome's of the world, you had all those guys, and it's just like I feel like every team wanted one of those guys, and I don't
Well,
know, it's not as valued.
I feel like if you think about it too, like teams are also they're moving guys around so much, and players are learning positions at a rapid clip. I mean, if you just use as an example, a couple of years ago when the Sox got Kyle Schwarber, the guy was he didn't play first base, and all of a sudden they were like, all right, you coming off the IL, here's a first baseman's mitt, and he played an okay first base. It just kind of shows you that they'll literally just give anybody a glove and say, hey, you're going to go out to first base. you know uh, so you know I agree. The days I think of these players, where where we would value them, they're being looked at completely differently by the front office executives.
I'm with you, but without my pick here is a guy that I think is going to potentially be in the MLB as of late 2025, but I'm choosing Nick Kurtz with the Athletics. Nick Kurtz, and the reason I like Nick Kurtz a lot is like, yeah, he's got the power. He was slugging like crazy at Wake Forest over the last couple seasons. I think he hit like almost 40 home runs over the last 2 years, but um, he's like a decently good fielder at first base. I think MLB.com had him as I think they graded him out. I think as a 60 field for being a lefty first baseman with some pop and having good defense. Like that's a guy that I can kind of get around, like a build that I kind of like. And I don't know why I just love a good lefty first baseman that can play a good first base in the field too. So I think Nick Kurtz is perfect for what the Athletics are looking for in terms of like building blocks for their team. Obviously, like moving, and maybe he's there once the stadium's ready in Vegas. Who knows? But I think Nick Kurtz is going to be pretty dang good for the Athletics in the future. So, Chris, we're moving on to second base. There's some pretty obvious ones there. There's also some sleepers on the list, but who are you buying at second?
So obviously, the obvious one would be Christian Campbell, even Travis with the Guardians. I'm trying not to cough here. I have this lingering cough from having the flu, so bear with me. Um, so I want to go outside the box on a player that I would like to sell on, and it's probably going to be the shortest guy on the list here, Short King and Tamar Johnson. He's he's slowly making his way up through the Pirates system. Probably projects more as a second baseman, but he could play a little bit of shortstop as well. If you look at his like scouting grades, they're all pretty much like even keel 50, 55 for the most part. Nothing like I don't think really has like one specific tool that jumps off the page, but just a steady, good player. I guess like the thing would be is like what is the bat going to look like at the big league level? We're not going to see that anytime soon. And the way that the Pirates forward their prospects and let these guys develop and come up through their system, you're probably looking at more of next year where he's gonna play. But outside of Johnson though, I'm gonna go with the obvious and just say Christian Campbell. Probably going to see him at the big league level, probably breaking camp with the Red Sox, giving them some flexibility at second base and in the outfield. Maybe play a little bit of third. As of right now, they haven't gone out and got the right-handed bat, so he's theoretically a right-handed stick. And if he can hit 260, with 15 home runs, we'll just say it in a very small sample size. I think it really opens up the prospects of what he's going to look like in a full season. But there's a lot of really good players in this list, and second base is looking pretty deep. And if you look at if you go to MiLB.com, these players are not just exclusive to second base. These guys can play multiple other infield positions. It's really just going to suit all of these teams really well as these players elevate through the system.
Yeah, my pick is going to be another guy that, you had kind of talked about Christian Campbell, that he could end up breaking camp with the big league team out of spring training. And I think another guy who's got a shot is Christian Moore with the Angels. And obviously Moore was the 8th overall pick out of Tennessee this past year. And I feel like the Angels are that team that, takes those risks. And I kept thinking about Zach Neto just a season or two ago, when he got drafted and he was already up in the bigs pretty quickly after that. And I think Christian Moore is going to be another guy. He's an SEC guy. He's 22 years old already. He's not young anymore. I just feel like he's got such a good bat that he's going to be like a no-brainer to be contributing and actually hitting pretty well for the LA Angels this year. They desperately need it. Obviously with Trout coming back, hopefully a healthy season, fingers crossed. You need to surround him with bats. Like you got to do the best you can while you have Mike Trout on your team, which is something the Angels have not done over the last few years. So I think Christian Moore is going to end up being a major league contributor very soon for the LA Angels. All right, Chris, moving on to shortstop. And at the shortstop position, I think you can say the same about second base, where it's pretty deep. You got some good names there. You also have some guys flying under the radar a little bit. Who are you buying to short?
JJ Weatherholt. I feel like the Cardinals, I don't want to say like they stole him in the draft. He fell, to the 7th overall pick. It's probably a year away. You're probably looking at 2026 for him. Again, another lefty. So it's kind of hits me in the feels when it comes to that piece. But, if you look at what the Cardinals are trying to do, the Cardinals are trying to shed some cash. They're going younger, trying to restock their system with this younger talent. He's a good building block to have in the infield. If they trade Nolan Arenado, I'm probably going to get a few other, infield prospects, to kind of, to throw in the lower level or the mid-tier part of the system. So I just like the fact that, again, left-handed hitter, probably just going to play, third base. I love the power, but I love the fact too that he's a good contact hitter, gets on base. Even all the way down to play Team USA, even with playing out in the Cape, he just seems to hit no matter wherever he's at. So I like it. I like it, and hey, who knows if he ends up playing shortstop? Does he bump Mason Wynn off of the depth chart? Does Wynn become expendable, and the Cardinals can spin him to get pitching? Or I think he opens up a lot of different options. Also on the other side of that too, when Chaim Bloom takes over, Chaim Bloom, when we got to see this in Boston, he loves his infielders. Chaim Bloom loves to collect infielders. He loves to collect the best athletes and move them around. And that's what Weatherholt is. He's a really good athlete. And I think it opens up a lot of different possibilities for the Cards.
Well, my pick is in the athlete trend there. I'm taking Jordan Lawler with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He was their first round pick back in 2021, and he actually made his MLB debut at 21 years old back in 2023. He was actually on the postseason rosters, which I think people kind of forget about. That he made the Arizona Diamondbacks World Series roster. He only got one plate appearance. He walked, but and I know that his time in the majors, he wasn't as successful. He was only 4 for 31 in the bigs, but he was only 21 years old. He's probably one of the fastest guys, I think, in minor league baseball. His grade on for speed is 70 on MLB.com. So he's stealing bags like crazy. He's legging doubles out. I mean, he's the kind of guy that you're going to want at the top of the lineup there in Arizona. He's going to be at 30 plus bags a year easily in the big leagues once he's actually consistent enough. He has been injured quite a bit over the past couple seasons, especially last year. I think he was only limited to like 23 or 24 games in the minors last year because of two separate different injuries. So I want him to bounce back. I want him to bounce back in a big way. I think he's going to be very good. Just a matter of time. Obviously, he's already made the MLB debut. He's got that out of the way. So I'm hoping for a healthy 2025 for Jordan Lawler. Chris, we're moving on to third base. Very stacked position. Who are you buying?
Third base, huh? There's a lot of options to choose from. But I'm gonna go within the Rays system. Believe it or not, this is a left-handed hitter as well. Braden Taylor, kind of similar in the scouting grades as Tamar Johnson. Good hitter. He's got some pop in the bat. He's good. He's a good fielder. I would probably just go and say, like, when it comes to the Rays, though, really does. I mean, they're always loaded when it comes to, when it comes to building their farm system. They got Taylor in like the middle part of the draft. He's probably a year or so away. I wonder though if he's a guy though that you can maybe move off of third base, because he's not a super big kid. He's only 5'10". I'm sorry, he's only 6 feet tall rather, but he's 180. So you could probably add to that frame. Whereas if you get a third baseman, they're like 6'5" and they're like 230, like you're probably playing third or first, where this guy's got that smaller profile. I don't know. I like the fact that Rays drafted him. He mashed right away. He hit like 14 bombs at high A. He also steals bags. He's kind of like that all-around complete player. Very Rays type player. So I do like Taylor. However, too, I am a little torn. I was going to probably say Matt Shaw because I think he's probably going to make the Cubs roster. He's going to probably see some time, with the Cubs. I know you're not going to mention Kobe Mayo because I feel like he's a super obvious. He's another guy, though. Again, 6'5", 230, probably just going to play first or third. I wish he would have gotten more time with the Orioles last season. So super deep. There's plenty other names too. I know who you're going to go with. I know you're going to say in a second. Brady House, another one. Like, it's another guy that's knocking on the door. Power hitter, playing third base. Third base is super deep on this prospect list, and we didn't even name half these other players. But I'll let you name your dude.
Yeah, mine's solely a fun pick. I fell in love with Tommy White, in LSU, and he led all of D1 in RBIs at his final season at LSU. He had 105 RBIs as LSU won like the Natty last year. Like, that's incredible. He's got amazing power. I mean, he doesn't play good defense. I mean, I don't think he's going to stick at third base long term. I think he's got first base written all over him, but his bat is going to single-handedly carry him through minor league baseball. He just mashes the ball, and that's all he does. Like, he doesn't play good defense. He doesn't do anything. He's listed as a third baseman. I could definitely just see him playing first quite a bit, but obviously when the organization also has Nick Kurtz at first base, in the lower minors, Tommy White's going to have to play some third this year. But yeah, I'm going Tommy White solely off of vibes. He was a second-round pick this past year, so it's not like he's a nobody, but there's tons of names on that list that I could have chose from, so it was tough. Chris, we're moving on to catcher. And I know we talked a little bit off air about catcher, so I'm intrigued. Who are you buying on this catcher list?
Blake Mitchell with the Royals. He's power bat. Probably, it's like, think about it. The Royals have Salvador Perez, and he hit 1 million bombs throughout his big league career. Steady behind the plate, all-star catcher, and they essentially are going to have something very similar. Said he's going to hit on the other side of the box, another left-handed hitter. It's not why I'm picking him, though. I love the fact that he has the power, and he has a rocket of an arm. You're not going to steal on this kid. He's only 20 years old, probably 2 years or so away. I just defensively, I think we got to see that when we were in Worcester and being around a manager who is so focused on the catchers because he was a catcher. So put a little more time into looking at other catchers around the league. I really like Blake Mitchell. I think he's a franchise catcher. And I think the Royals got another one. again, power and arm. What's there not to like?
I'm with you. And my pick on this list is Ethan Salas of the Padres. I feel like Ethan Salas has been around for 5 years, but he's only 18 years old, and his defense is the thing that's one of my favorite things about him because I love a good defensive catcher. Like I love a catcher with a good bat, and everybody, all the fans want to see like a catcher hitting like 260, 270. Like the Adley Rushman type. I feel like fans want to see like more Adley Rushmans out there. But Ethan Salas behind the plate, man, he is incredible. I mean, he's got a 70 grade in the field on MLB.com, and I just for being 18 years old and already being in playing in high A last year, he could make it up to double A this year by the time that he turns 19 years old in June. So I'm all in on Ethan Salas. I think he's incredible behind the plate. I think it's just going to be what is the bat, right? It's like, can he keep up with the level he's at for his bat? Like I think the glove is already there. It's already levels above, but it's the bat. Is the bat going to turn around? He only hit 206 last year in high A once he got up there. So I am curious how the bat's going to be, but I do think he's going to end up turning it around at some point and getting more comfortable as he fills out more because he's only 18 years old, so he's still young. All right, Chris, we're going to outfield right now. Who are you buying?
Again, another deep list here. I could really just be corny and be like, oh, Roman Anthony, right? There's so many good players in this list. I like Walker Jenkins again, not because he's a lefty, but he's a 19-year-old power hitter. Could potentially, I mean, I think he's in Double A. Could potentially see some time with the Twins, not this year, but next year. But in the hit tool, the power, it's everything you're looking for. Hit over 300 in between July and August in the system. I don't know. I like Jenkins. I like Dylan Cruz is on this list as well. I actually like Cruz a lot, but I was trying not to go with the obvious player as well. I'd like to see what Dominguez the Yankees can do. Finally healthy, but he's going to be at the big league level, as well. So I like Walker Jenkins. I think he's knocking on that door of being one of the, of when Roman Anthony basically makes his way to Fenway and he's an everyday big leaguer. I think Jenkins is going to take over that top slot of minor league outfielders.
Yeah, my pick is Chase DeLauter with the Cleveland Guardians, and I have liked DeLauter since he was their first round pick back in 2022. He had a bad luck injury in 2024. He broke his foot, so he missed 3 months this year. But so take his numbers this year with a grain of salt. But they've actually sent him to the Arizona Fall League twice, and in his 2 trips to the Arizona Fall League, his slash line is 313, 417, 522. And that's facing the best competition there is around baseball in the Arizona Fall League. I think DeLauter is kind of a sneaky, under the radar type of guy that's going to end up contributing in Cleveland this year. He's already 23. He's been in the minors now for a little over 3 full seasons, if you include his draft year. So I think DeLauter is going to end up being a pretty good regular there in Cleveland in the outfield. It's a team that desperately needs another outfielder next to Stephen Kwan. I think those two in the outfield together is going to be really fun to watch. All right, Chris, we are to the pitchers now. We're going to start on the righties. Which righty are you liking on this list?
Bubba Chandler. I'm buying Bubba Chandler stock. Look, the Pirates are loaded with young pitching. Bubba Chandler is one of the many names they have within their system. They already got Paul Steen at the big league level. They already got Jared Jones at the big league level. They got Mitch Keller, who they locked up, to a long-term deal. And now they got Bubba Chandler, who is literally could make the team out of camp, is going to pitch with them this year. I would say like it's the rich getting richer, but it's the Pirates. They can never seem to get out of their own way. They are building a formidable rotation of young studs, and Chandler is just going to continue to fall right in line with what they have there. The kid touches almost 97 with his fastball. if you, I don't know what there is not to like about Bubba Chandler, and there's so many other guys too on this list. Love Rhett Lauder. I don't know if I love him on the mound or the fact that like you get the lettuce flowing in the back like when he's going. Um, I and I mentioned you off the air too, like Sproat with the Mets. I think is another young stud. I think he's going to impact the Mets this year. Pretty much everybody on this list is going to impact the big league roster more than likely before the end of the season, with maybe the exception of Chase Burns. Obviously, I don't think he's playing rookie league, but I don't know. Love Bubba Chandler, and there's more too in the Pirate system. They have more young arms that are it's making their way up, but Chandler, to me, is the is my guy off this list. But there's others you can argue for. I'm not touching the Roki stuff. That's too simple.
Yeah, I'm not choosing Roki either. But I am going with like an easy one, kind of a layup. This is probably the most layup one I've had. I'm going to Andrew Painter. He's one of the best stories out right now. He was the Phillies' first round pick in 2021, but he was a top prospect in baseball. He had Tommy John surgery that kept him. He didn't pitch at all in 2023 or 2024 until the Arizona Fall League this past fall, and he threw elite level stuff on the mound there in Arizona. He looked like the old Andrew Painter, the old first round pick that we know and love. I think he's going to end up. I want him to rebound. I want him to get back to who he was before the Tommy John. I mean, he didn't pitch for 2 whole seasons in competitive baseball. So I hope Andrew Painter is back. I hope that the Arizona Fall League was not a fluke, and I want to see him back fully healthy for 2025.
Yeah,
All right.
too. Is you're like, I want to see the Andrew Painter, but he's only 21 years old too. He's
I
another
know.
one that feels like it's been around forever, but he's only 21 years old.
It is weird. I look at some of the ages on here, and I was saying that about Ethan Salas, and I'm like, I feel like I've like been hearing his name since he was like 15 years old, because we have, to be honest, but he's only 18. Like, it's crazy some of these ages. But all right, Chris, last but not least, shooting to the lefties. Who are you taking off the lefty list?
I'm going to go with Justin Robleski, even though he's probably not going to pitch for the Dodgers ever again because they are loaded at every single roster spot on that team, especially from a pitching perspective. He did get he did get a cup of coffee with the Dodgers this year. I actually saw a few games aired on ESPN in which he pitched this past year. It was only 8 games, 6 starts. Left-handed pitcher. I don't know what it is about lefties, but left-handed pitcher. He doesn't throw like super hard anymore, but he's got a solid pitch mix, fastball, curveball, slider, cutter. Also has a change in there. Control, not really an issue. I just think that he needs time, and if the Dodgers weren't stacked and loaded, and he was in a different system, or even like a different team, I think like a full season where he made anywhere between 25 to 30 starts, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised with what you're going to get out of him, especially as a lefty. Probably not, I don't know if he profiles as like a front of the rotation kind of guy, but yeah, it's like the rich is still super rich. And what's good with the Dodgers though is they can take a Justin Robleski and they can trade him at the deadline. And I'm not sure what they need at this point, right? But if they needed to get something else or someone went down, or at the very least their pitching seemed to going down a little bit. He's got some depth and an option. I like Robleski. I also like Jackson Ferris, but same thing. I just don't see either one of these guys sniffing the Dodgers roster.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we're going to see one of those names traded off of their team at some point in 2025. Obviously, once even maybe towards the deadline, and the Dodgers are, 10, 15 games up, and they just want to solidify their run to the postseason. But my pick is to round us off here, Hagen Smith. I know he's not the top lefty on the list in the White Sox organization that belongs to Noah Schultz, but I have a soft spot for the SEC. Big SEC guy, and I think if you're pitching in the SEC, you're facing some lineups every single day. You're out there of guys that teams loaded with professional hitters there. He was the SEC pitcher of the year this past year. He was the 5th overall pick. in the draft. Obviously, he only got in the 3 games in 2024 after you got drafted, but I think Hagen Smith is going to climb through the system pretty quick there in Chicago. Obviously, it's the White Sox. They could use some help at the MLB level, but I know that you don't want to rush these guys. But I could see Hagen Smith starting the year in Double-A and possibly getting up to Triple-A towards the end of the year and right there on the cusp of the majors. But yeah, that wraps up our position by position look at the minor league system there. We were looking at all the top 10 prospects according to MLB.com. But Chris, without further ado, let's shoot off to the interview with Mitch Bratt. Please enjoy. All right, guys, I am joined by Texas Rangers pitcher Mitch Bratt. Mitch, we were just talking a little bit off air. I know you're down at the complex in Arizona, but how have things been so far since getting to Arizona?
Things have been great. I've been here for just over 2 weeks now, getting acclimated back into what a spring training is going to look like. So I like to get down here a little bit earlier, kind of get acclimated, get back into the swing of things before things do get really hectic once a few days start from now. So it gets pretty hectic, but I'm just happy to be able to have the opportunity to come down early, throw my bullpens outside, and kind of go from there.
I know this isn't really the hot time in Arizona, but how long does that take you and your body to get acclimated from being in Canada in the off season and up in the north down to Arizona?
I'd say probably a week. I noticed my lips got pretty chapped, or got pretty dry, so I needed to get them chapped, and that took a little bit of getting used to. But I'd say roughly a week to get into the full swing of things.
Was that something as well? And obviously, I know I was familiar with your high school journey as well. Obviously, you had made a stop down in Georgia as well. But is that something that you don't think you'll ever get used to, or you think like, okay, like probably by like year 5, you think you'll probably be settled in and be like, okay, I know what I'm doing here, or is that something you don't think you'll ever get used to?
Honestly, at this point, I feel like I'm a pretty well seasoned traveler to where it's nothing too out of the ordinary. But I'd say the biggest difference would be this time of year going from the super, super cold to I mean, it's still pretty warm out here for my experiences in Arizona. So, but once things kind of pick up in the season, that's when it gets real hot. So,
Yeah, and if I'm not gonna assume where you're gonna start the year at whatever affiliate, but obviously you ended last season in Frisco, and and I'm sure Frisco in the summertime. It's not pretty. It's
no.
it can get up to 110 during the day, so I'm sure that's something that none of us can get used to. But I did want to kind of ask you a few questions, obviously about coming out of the 2024 season, and you had a fantastic year at Hickory and there in High A, but I did want to ask. I looked at your game logs, and your first outing of your year was your worst one you had in high A.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
how does one rebound from that?
So going into the year, hopes were high. First outing out, repeating high A for was my second year in high A, and I kind of got my teeth kicked in a little bit. So it was a good moment to take a step back. And then a few outings after that still weren't great, but the underlying numbers looked good. But from the outside, it didn't look so good. So kind of kept honing in on my craft, making the adjustments needed, and by the end of almost the end of July, I had almost had a sub 3 ERA. In between the months of, I want to say, if you take like the first month out or the first 2-3 weeks of the season, I almost had a sub 1 ERA. So, I really did pick things up. But yeah, that first outing wasn't pretty, but we bounced back pretty well. So I was happy with that.
Yeah, I feel like it, in an alternate universe somewhere, you had that first start and you did what you did and you just kind of let it snowball from there. But you didn't do that.
Right,
You
right.
turned it around quickly and you did that. And
Yeah.
did that help the confidence at all? Obviously, getting the real bad one out of the way, the very first one of the year, can't get much worse than this, and you kind of roll from
Right.
there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they say one bad outing really won't ruin your ERA until you give up 7 over 3. So that'll do it. But no, I did bounce back well. But just honestly building off of each outing. My goal at the beginning of the year was throw 100 plus innings, which I'd never done before, and I got up to 115, I believe. So that was a big one, trying to stay deep in games. I think I had a stretch there for almost 2 months where I went 5 plus innings almost every outing. So that was the goal, just go 5 plus and put the team in the best position to win a ball game.
And so obviously, what you did in high A, and I know you said you were kind of repeating the level a little bit, but you did end up making it double A, and you pitched a little bit there in Frisco to end the year. What was the experience like going up to double A?
It was sweet. I mean, I know a lot of guys who were with me in high A in 2023 who were there this past year. So the adjustment process off the field wasn't too bad. But the adjustment on the field, I mean, hitters definitely have their sights a little bit smaller. They're able to make better adjustments, especially during counts, and they do damage on your mistakes. So being able to understand that process, the first few outings, I kind of just went out there and thought, whatever happens, happens. I'm going to do what I've been doing in Hickory because I had so much success. And then we had to hone in on a few different things towards the end of the year. So I think we're in a really good spot going into 25 with the adjustments we made towards the end of the year.
What did you notice in regards to double A? Like, I guess is the major differences from high A? Like, was it the competition? What I guess what kind of things did you notice?
I'd say the competition for sure. Hitters having their sweet spots and when to attack certain pitches and when not to. Like there was quite a few pitches that I threw towards the end of my time in Hickory that I was getting swing and miss on that I just kept throwing the same spot, and then I tried to do the same thing once I got to double A, and they were just spitting on the pitches. They didn't want anything to do with them. So that adjustment was a little bit different, and then trying to refine or be a little bit more fine with certain pitches, like working on backdoor cutters to righties, making sure I get that slider down to the right-handed hitters, or else it's gonna go a ways if I don't hit my spots. So I'd say those are the biggest things.
So I did a little digging, obviously, before I do on a lot of these, and I saw during the 2024 season, I saw a few people on social media kind of talking about you added some good weight onto your frame, and you also had a velocity uptick. And
Mhm.
are both of those things true, by the way?
Yes, I'd say so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't want to just like say it and
No,
it
no,
wasn't
no. You're
true,
good.
but I saw enough people, incredible people out there say it. So I'm
Right.
like, okay, I think I can trust it.
That's
But
funny.
okay, so you ended up, adding some velocity and some good weight on your body. What did that do for your game, your arsenal? I guess like what did that do for you here in 2024?
I would say it added the longevity of the season. Was a big one. Being able to have that full off season where I could hone in on my craft of eating well, sleeping well, everything leading up to spring training, and then throughout spring training was definitely a really big one from a recovery standpoint and a longevity standpoint of trying to get through the entire season. And then I'd say the uptick in velo was with my high pitching coach. We had a really good talk of, and I asked him, like, why can't I just be like 90, 91, 92? I can get out some more pitchability that way. And then he sat me down. We went over the numbers, and he goes, when you throw your fastball 91 plus, here are the results. And when you throw it sub 91, here are the results. And it was night and day difference. So that kind of opened my eyes a little bit more to that. So it wasn't really more of an intent thing. I think it was just more of an aggression mindset of I'm coming after this hitter. I'm giving him all I got, and I'm leaving it all out on the field.
And so, obviously those changes came in the middle of last season, and I know guys are always working on things during the season, and obviously in the off season you have a lot of time to also tweak things, and maybe the organization goes to certain guys and said, "Hey, we'd like you to try out this pitch or do whatever with the arm slot or whatever it is." What did you work on this off season?
This offseason, going into 2025, was a big emphasis on cleaning the arm action up. I had a tendency towards the end of the year of getting a little bit too long, and everything almost just didn't seem to be working in sync well together. And the biggest emphasis was just clean up minor tweaks here and there, make sure everything is moving a little bit smoother down the mound, and I'm exerting less energy while also throwing harder at the same time. So I bought in a little bit more to the movement aspect pieces they were working on, and once I cleaned that up, I mean, my first few bullpens here have been thrown harder than I ever have at this time of the year. Everything feels smooth, clean. So just trying to stay on top of my stuff like that, and trying to work on a new curveball that I added at the end of last year, and predominantly going to be throwing that to right-handed hitters because my sweeper that I was throwing most of last year is going right in the bat path of the right-handed hitters when I leave it a little bit too high in the zone. So being able to add that pitch to offset everything else, and repertoire wise, it works out a little bit better. So I'd say those two things were the biggest for me.
So I find something fascinating too. And, I've had a lot of pitchers on this show this offseason and from all around different orgs. And, I hear from guys with the Yankees, the Red Sox, Twins, whoever it is. And it's always unique to hear like how each pitching development, I guess, approaches each pitcher, especially a guy that gets up to AA like yourself. And how hands-on are the Rangers on, I guess, deciding what they want you to throw? Do they give you any freedom on adding pitches, or is it all team driven?
I'd say it's a pretty good combination of both. Towards the lower levels, it's a little bit more coach driven of here's your concrete plan. You can obviously say no to them, but they have their plan. They'll give you the information to why you're going to be doing this. So instead of them just being like, "Oh, you're going to throw a changeup today," but I've never thrown a changeup before. It's here's this new changeup grip, but here is all the info to back it up with grips with people similar to your arm slot who throw the same speed and metric wise we think you could get to. So there's a lot of information to back it up, which is nice. And then once you get to AA, what I noticed is a little bit more hands off. Like you've kind of earned your way to this position with what you've been able to do. So if you want to make any tweaks or changes, you can go to the pitching coach. You can go to them and explain why you think you want to do this. But everything has to have a reason. That's what I've noticed is one day I'm not just going to be like, I'm going to start throwing a splitter. And then they're going to be like, why? And if I don't have an answer, then they're going to be like, you haven't done enough research into yourself to why you need to do that. So the biggest thing for me, I'd say, is being able to have that good relationship with the pitching coach to where it's an open communication, where if he recommends this, we can bounce ideas off each other and then come to a conclusion together instead of it just being super one-sided.
So, we kind of talked about earlier, you tallied over 30 innings so far in AA to end the season. And did it set in yet that you're only 2 calls away from the big leagues?
Um, I'd say so. I mean, especially now being around some of the guys on the big league staff and getting to know them a little bit more, it started to become a little bit more real. I was fortunate enough to go to Arlington in January for a camp with some of the other guys, and we were able to talk with Mike Maddox and some of the other coaches on staff and understand their philosophies and what life is going to be like when you do get called up to the big leagues, who you're going to be getting calls from, etc. So that process seems to be a little bit easier, or ease my mind a little bit. But I think on the day of my major league debut, when it does happen, it's going to be pretty surreal and things are going to go well. But I know it's going to be a lot in the moment.
So it's kind of funny. We were talking about like the big league team and they're in Arlington and everything. And I had Grant Anderson on the show a few weeks ago, and obviously he had a front row seat for their World Series run a
Right.
couple years ago now. And hearing his story of how he went through the system, and I also had Justin Slayton on the show as well, who was also in the Texas Ranger system a couple years ago. But so they kind of both gave their perspectives of what it was like playing for the Rangers and how they like treated, their pitching development and I guess just development overall. But for you as a younger guy in the system, obviously your perspective is a little different than a Grant Anderson per se. But, for you pitching in the minor leagues for the team that won the World Series, what was that like from your perspective?
It was a cool experience seeing guys that I knew personally be able to experience that in the World Series and the success they had. Like Cody Bradford, who came out of the bullpen, started. He was like the Swiss Army knife for the team. Whatever they needed, he was able to provide. And being able to be here in Arizona when I was in the fall league, when all this was going on. So being around like-minded people with the Rangers, where walking through the clubhouse, like, oh, big day today, and walking through, it was pretty cool to be in the big league clubhouse side during a fall league to see them have all the success they did have.
Yeah, obviously I know that, you were a little farther off. I think you were down in low A or high or whatever it
That's
was
right,
whenever
yeah.
that they were making the run. But I always think it's so cool though. Obviously, like, your organization that you're in goes on and wins, and you're seeing guys, you're like, hey, like I was, my locker was kind of like right down from this guy's in spring training, and now this guy's like pitching in the World Series. So it's always cool. Well, speaking of like big events, obviously we're creeping up. It's already 2025, creeping up on the next WBC. I want to ask you, how excited are you to potentially be part of the next WBC?
I'm excited. The roster going forward is going to be pretty good if we can get everybody on board for that team. I think we got something to prove with Baseball Canada. Kind of fallen out of the preliminary teams, but I think if we can put a really good roster together, we'll be front and center with all the big countries in the world. So I'm excited for the opportunity if I do get it, and I know I'll be able to put a good roster up.
So obviously, you took part in the WBC in 2023, and I want to ask you, like, having experienced that at such a young age, what kind of things do you think you took from that experience going into even pro ball, and then essentially, I guess, eventually the next WBC? What kind of things are you taking from that experience?
I'd say the biggest thing that I talk to a lot of mental coaches and just people in the organization is like you've almost already had your big league debut against one of the best lineups of all time. So, I mean, very grateful for the opportunity. It was very cool to have that group around me. Obviously, things didn't go the way I wanted, but it was cool to see the group that we did have with the team of. I mean, we had guys on that team who were drafted before I was even born. So that's quite the odd combo of guys we had together. But the older guys kind of came together and rallied around me and kind of kept my spirits up during that time. So that was pretty cool to see.
What piece of advice would you give, maybe in the next WBC, and let's say it's a different country, and there's a 19-year-old kid on the mound, and he has to go up against, the Mookie Betts, the Mike Trouts of the world, and the Team USA lineup. What piece of advice would you give him?
I'd say just enjoy the moment. It's going to be high stress. Everyone's going to be cheering against you, but just enjoy the moment. It's still 60 feet, 6 inches. You're still throwing to a catcher. Like, it's only the person in the box that's different. Like everything else is constant. Everything else stays the same, and just soak it all up. Don't get caught up in the moment, and just enjoy it all.
So obviously, a lot of talk obviously about the lineup you face and all that, but you also have had a teammate who I believe will be a Hall of Famer when he's done, Freddie Freeman.
Right.
So what was it like having him, there in the dugout, in the clubhouse, and just sharing like, a team with him?
It was a cool opportunity to be with Freddie. He's really down to earth guy, really good guy in the clubhouse. After the game or during the game, I remember he kind of patted me on the chest right as I was coming out of the game, and I don't remember at the moment. The only reason I remember is because I saw it back. But being able to talk to him after, it was a cool experience. He's like, keep your head up, like you're young, you got a bright future ahead of you. And I just said thank you for kind of boosting me back up in the moment. But no, he was a really good guy and good company to be around.
So I'll let you off the hook there, and you can say that might have been one of your favorite moments. But I will ask you, which moment stuck out to you the most, I guess, from your experience in the WBC?
Ooh, moment that stuck out the most, I'd say it's kind of a bland answer, but just the team camaraderie we did have, like being able to have all the guys together that like the guys when I was younger, I grew up watching on that team, John Exford and some other names especially, and them kind of having my back in that situation as well. And the amount that we were able to gel together for the 2 weeks that we were together was a really cool feeling. And then just playing with some of the teammates that I did have, like I mentioned, Freddie. Owen Casey is another one with the Cubs system. I grew up playing with him. Like some of these guys I played with growing up, to be able to be on that team as well was a really surreal experience. And yeah, honestly, just the team
No,
camaraderie was the biggest
yeah,
thing for me.
I don't hate that answer at all. And you brought up a guy like Owen Carey, and obviously there's some guys around pro ball right now, some younger Canadians. I know we brought up off air, the Duffys, with Matt
Mhm.
Duffy being in the Red Sox organization. There's Canadians kind of all spread out. You also have another Canadian in the Rangers organization as well.
Right.
Do you keep tabs of all the Canadians around pro ball? Like, is there like I'm not going to say that is there like a group chat or anything, but obviously I see like some social media accounts sometimes of like keeping track of the guys in pro ball from Canada and everything. Like, do you ever keep tabs of like, oh yeah, that guy's an Ontario kid and he's playing in
Right.
the Mariners org, or like, is there anything like that for you guys?
I'd say for the most part, yes. So a lot of the guys that like when you kind of move up the ranks through a baseball Canada or baseball in Canada, you kind of get to know everybody a little bit closer with the junior national team with Team Canada. So I've been pretty fortunate to get to know a lot of the minor league and some big league guys now who have been coming up through the Canadian system, and we've kind of kept tabs on each other, like check in at the halfway point of the year, at the end of the season, depending on where we are in our lives. And then when we do see each other during season, we always got to take a picture together, send it to our old coaches, and it's just a whole big thing. But it's always great to run into those guys, and especially when you face them. I was able to face one of my former teammates quite a few times, who was on Midland this past season. So it's always cool. Right before the game, kind of give him a little bit of a head nod, and then I got to punch his ticket a few times. So that was
There
pretty
we
funny.
go.
He also got a hit off me, to be fair. But yeah, it's always funny then coming back in the off season and just going over those moments. So it's pretty cool.
Was baseball your first sport?
Yes, so I played a little bit of hockey growing up, and then it was baseball and basketball throughout elementary school, high school.
Okay. Um, the only reason I asked that, I took a trip up to Toronto and Ontario this past summer for the first time in my life,
Oh,
and
nice.
I found it absolutely fascinating. Me and my wife stayed right on Niagara on the Lake, and we
Oh,
tried a
nice.
bunch of ice wine. Are you familiar with ice wine?
Not so much. Not
I
so
know you're
much.
young,
No.
but I don't know if the parents or anything like that, maybe you had heard of it before.
Yeah, I do know of it, but I don't
Okay.
believe I've ever had it.
I liked it, by the way. I thought it was fantastic. But the only reason I ask is because when we were up there, and obviously, like I took her to the Hockey Hall of Fame, all that, right?
Mhm.
Like I had to do it. But a lot of people were talking. They're like, soccer's starting to become like a huge thing up in Canada. It's like they're like the kids are playing soccer all the time now up there, and all this. And it's like, well, you just expected everybody to have a hockey stick in their hand. Not true. So for you, like, what sport do you think is on the rise in Canada, other than hockey? You
I'd say
can say
basketball is
baseball
a
too.
big one. Yeah, I'd say baseball or basketball. I'm more familiar with those two sports. But I mean, basketball players in the NBA have definitely taken off from Canada, with Shy being from Canada and Oklahoma City. Um, and then more so baseball too. I feel like when I was coming up through the ranks between like 2018 to 2021, you had some guys, like it was kind of far and few between, but now looking back on it and talking with some of the coaches, and they're like, we have some kids who could be something really special and committing to some high end Division 1 universities. And when I was home, being able to see them throw a hit, whatever it may be, it was pretty cool to see where they were in retrospect to where I was when I was their age, and be able to give them advice, feedback on whatever it may be.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. I am not sleeping on Canada. I'm not sleeping on them in the World Cup coming up either. Like I think they're on the rise. Like you said, basketball, they got some good guys coming up as well, and baseball as well. So obviously looking forward to just Canada sports in general in the next decade. I think it's going to be probably the
For
best
sure.
it's been. Okay, so I got a question for you to kind of wrap this up here. You already are down there at the complex spring training. I think pitchers and catchers report this week.
Next few days. Yeah, next few days.
Yeah. So everybody will start to kind of get down there, and you'll start to see everybody again. For you, with this spring training camp coming up, what kind of things are you looking forward to? Like, do you set like any, maybe not statistic goals, but do you set any, like, I guess, any other type of goals throughout spring, or I guess like what do you use spring training for?
Spring training, I'd say for me especially, is just to make sure everything's in a good spot going into the season. So being able to kind of refine those minor tweaks that I made in the off season, making sure those are all solidified before going into the season. Because I mean, there have been times, I think everybody goes through it, where during the season you're trying to make tweaks and changes, and it just doesn't really pan out too well, just because you're playing every day as a hitter and throwing how many ever times per week as a pitcher. Like it's tough to make those in-game changes, especially when everything matters, when everything's kept track of. Meanwhile, spring training, nobody really keeps track of stats. Just being able to kind of make sure you feel good and make sure things are kind of clicking the way you want. And then if that's the case, then you're good to go for the season. So something for me that I'd say going forward is just continuing to hone in on my craft of throwing strikes, getting hitters out. I talked about some stuff with my pitching coach at the end of last season, just pitch usage wise, that I think I'm going to work on a little bit more this spring training than I ever have. And then once I kind of have that honed in, I'm able to go into the season and go from there.
All right. So, I earlier in the show, you kind of talked about you hitting 100 innings for the first time in your career. What's the goal this year?
I said the goal would be, again, to throw 100 plus, 110 plus innings and just stay healthy as best as I can. It's pretty similar goals to last year. And because in the past I've made other goals, I want to throw this ERA with this and that, but it just doesn't make sense. Like if I throw 100 plus innings, I know that covers my innings. I know I'm getting deep into games, and I'm sure if that takes care of itself, my ERA, FIP, whatever it may be, will look just fine on the stat sheet. But I'd say the biggest things would be just enjoy every moment. You can get caught up in the moment sometimes. High stress situations, just enjoy those, and again, throw 100 plus innings, stay healthy, and see where that takes me throughout the season.
Always good to see guys, hovering around, 110 plus innings. It's always good to see, man, because it's obviously you stayed healthy all year and you went deeper into games, like you said. So, Mitch, thank you so much for hopping on. Obviously, we're looking forward to the season starting up here very, very shortly. And obviously, best of luck to you for the rest of spring, and then obviously once the affiliate ball starts. But thank you so much for hopping on.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.